continue now at the top of Daf Mem Beis Amud Aleph and Meseches Chulin. This is Chullin Daf 42a. And the previous Amud, the Mishnah made a distinction between one who slaughters an animal. This is just talking about a regular animal that's not consecrated. He slaughters an animal for the sake of a carbon that could have been donated, like let's say an ola can be donated. So he slaughters a regular animal and he says it's for the sake of an ola. That is problematic because people might think it actually is an ola, since one can simply donate an ola, and therefore they'll think he's slaughtering it outside the Beis HaMikdash, and that's fine. Of course, that wouldn't be fine if it was a real carbon ola. It would be a problem of shchutei chutz, and so therefore that's problematic. But if he slaughters it for the sake of a carbon which could not be donated, let's say a carbon chatos, that's not a problem because everyone knows this person is not obligated in a chatos. And at the end of the Mishnah gives the rule, again says zeh haklal, this is the rule, whatever can be donated is a problem, whatever cannot be donated is not a problem. And the Gemara said whatever cannot be donated is not a problem. What is that coming to include? And the Gemara said in the previous Amud that comes to include the ola of a yoledis, an ola of a woman who gave birth. So that already is something that cannot be donated, that is dependent upon the birth, and therefore that's something that cannot be donated, and therefore that is not a problem, again, if one were to slaughter for the sake of such a carbon. And then on the previous Amud, the Gemara brought Rebbe Lazar, and Rebbe Lazar said, but that would not be true. Let's say you have a situation where there's a wife at home, and therefore there really is a possibility that he is slaughtering it for the sake of an actual olas yoledis. And again, Rebbe Lazar said that the case would specifically be where he said that he's doing it for the sake of his wife's ola as a yoledis. So then, in such a situation, again, that actually would be a problem. And the Gemara says, well, that's obvious. Rebbe Lazar essentially made the same point earlier already, that if there's a possibility of confusion, it's a problem. And the Gemara continues in answers to that. Ma'u detema, what might you have said? Im isa diyald, if it was really true that she had given birth, so kala havale, the word would have gotten out. And so therefore maybe there really isn't such a concern. Nobody's going to think that. Kamash malon, but no, he's coming to teach us, Eimer apule apple, it's possible there was a miscarriage. Maybe people didn't hear about it. And so therefore, again, in such a situation, basically where there's a reason for confusion, then there is a problem. Rashi explains, Ma'u detema misa diyalda kala havale. What might you have said if she gave birth, so then the word goes out? So made the yadi de meshakar. Everybody knows he's lying, and this is not actually an olas yoledes. Kamash malon Rebbe Lazar. Rebbe Lazar is teaching us to Eimer apule apple, that maybe there was a miscarriage. Now Rashi continues with another version, or another girsa really. Lishnachrina had Rebbe Lazar Rebbe Avo lo garsin. In another version, we don't have the statement of Rebbe Lazar and Rebbe Avo at all in the Gemara. The Gemara is simply saying what is the klal coming to include when we say something that is not donated, and the text is more simple. V'achli garsin, and the proper text of the Gemara is as follows: Lasuye olas yoledis, we're including an olas yoledis that's not donated, and mahu detema, the mahu detema is now going on that, what the Mishnah is including. Mahu detema, because what might you have said? Ema yulu de yolid, maybe she gave birth. Kamashmal, and it's teaching us dim isa de olid naf, she gave birth. Kala isla, so then the word would have gotten out. Uveshayesh lo isha mesuklam asnisin. According to this, the Mishnah is talking where he has a wife, simple case. V'yitzrich latana lemisnia bazeh klal, and the reason why the Tana of the Mishnah needs to include this case in the zeh klal, demau detema nechash lo laman dechazi savar betzina olid kamashmal. And again, we have this concern. Maybe it happened privately, and so that is not going to be a concern in such a situation, and that's why, again, in this case, by olas yoledis, there is no reason for confusion. And Rashi notes, Zeh shamati ve'ikru, I heard this girsa, and this makes more sense. Chada dehalo amru v'hai ma'u detema b'chalach shmaita da'amuroi delo shanu le'el. When we bring in one of these statements of the Amoroim on the Mishnah, we don't find the Gemara on the previous Amud ever saying, Ma'hu detema, what might you have said on the statement of the Amora, like we're doing over here. We're saying Pshita, it's obvious what Rebbe Lazar says, Ma'u detema. The Ma'u detema is always going on the Mishnah. Amasnisan dezeh aklal kamo amru Ma'u detema. V'yorcha the Gemara lemeimar Ma'u detema aklal demasnisan. It makes sense to say a Ma'u detema on something being included in a klal, in a general rule that's at the end of the Mishnah. That would make sense. And so therefore it fits the Gemara better that the Ma'u detema is going on the Mishnah and not on the statement of the Amora. V'yorin further, b'she'ein lo isha lamalei lemisni. Also, if there's no wife, why even teach the aklal? This is a rule. Le'asuya, to include it. Pshita l'may nechash. That's obvious. There's no concern at all in such a situation. That essentially is too obvious. Hadron alach hashochet. We will return to you parak hashochet. This is the end of the second parak of Meseches Chulin. If you're enjoying these videos and this channel, please like, share, and subscribe. And take a look at the description box below to see how you can support this channel. And we will now begin the third parak of Meseches Chulin. And the parak begins with the Mishnah, Elu treifos bebehema. The following are considered treifa when it comes to animals. A treifa is an animal essentially that has a fatal wound. And the Mishnah says, Nekuvas Haveshet, the first one, Nekuvas Haveshet, that's if the esophagus of the animal is punctured. Upsukas Hagargeres, that refers to the trachea, which is severed. Nikov Korom Shel Moach, if the membrane of the brain is punctured. Nikev halev lebeis chalolo, if the heart was punctured into its chamber. Nishbara hashedra v'nifsak hachut shelo, if the spine was broken and its cord was severed. Nital hakovid v'lo nishtayer himenu klum, if the liver was removed and nothing remains of it. Hareya shenikvo shechasra, if the lung was punctured or if it was deficient. Rabbi Shimon Omer, Rabbi Shimon says, achatinakev leveis hasymphonos, it's not a treifa unless it's punctured all the way to the bronchi. Nikva hakeva, the animal is also a treifa if the fourth stomach, which is called the maw, if that is punctured. Nikva hamora, if the gallbladder is punctured. Nikvu hadakin, if the intestines were punctured. And the Mishnah continues, hakeres hapnimis shenikva, if the inner paunch, if that is punctured. O shenikra rov hachitzon, or if the majority of the outer paunch, if that is torn. The paunch is the first stomach. The Gemara will discuss what exactly it means by inner and outer. But in any case, again, if the inner one is punctured or the outer one is torn by the majority, that's a treifa. Rabbi Yehuda says hagedola, by a large animal, so tefach, by the outer paunch, so one tefach, if that amount is torn, that's a treifa. V'aktana, if it's a smaller animal, so then beruba, so then if the majority is torn, even if that does not add up to a tefach, that also will be a treifa. And the Mishnah continues, hemsis, that refers to the omasim, that is the third stomach. Ubeis hakosos, the beis hakosos is the reticulum, that's the second stomach. Shenikvu lachutz, the way Rashi understands shenikvu lachutz is, it was punctured to the outside, all the way through to the outside, so that is considered to be a treifa. And the Mishnah continues, nafla min hagag, if it fell from a roof. Nishtabru rov tzloseh, if most of its ribs were broken. Udrusas hazaev, if the animal is clawed by a wolf. Again, these are cases of treifa. Rabbi Yehuda says, drusas hazaev b'dak, if it's clawed by a wolf, that's by a smaller animal. Udrusas ari begas, and then if it's clawed by a lion, that would be by a larger animal. And Rabbi Yehuda here, when he refers to a small animal, he's referring to a small species. And when he's referring to a large animal, that's a large species. And the Mishnah continues, it's unclear whether this part of the Mishnah is a continuation of Rabbi Yehuda's statement or just the Mishnah in general. Jerusas ha-nates be'of hadak, by small birds, if it's clawed by the nates is a kind of bird, that renders it a treifa. Jerusas hagas be'of hagas, and then there's another bird called the gas bird, if that claws a larger bird, so then in that case, again, that will be a treifa. And the Mishnah concludes, Zehaklal, this is the general rule, Kol shein kamo achaya treifa, any type of injury that, again, will not allow the animal to live, that is a treifa. And the Gemara says, Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish says, Remez l'treifa min haTorah minayin. From where do we have a hint to the idea of treifa in the Torah? The Gemara says, minayin, from where? What does that mean? Uvasar basada treifa lo sochelu. It says if you have meat in the field, that's a treifa. Literally, treifa means that it's torn apart by another animal. But again, that shouldn't be eaten. And so it says explicitly in the pasuk that there's such a thing as treifa. And so the Gemara continues and says, Elo remez l'treifa she'ein achaya min haTorah minayin. From where do we know? Where is there a hint that a treifa is an animal that the injury is such that it's not going to be able to live? Where do we have that hint? To Katani Seifa, because again, what did it say at the end of our Mishnah? It said, Zaklal, this is the rule. Kol shein kamo achaya treifa, then anything which it's not going to live, any kind of injury which would cause the animal not to live, that's a treifa. Mechlal, the treifa in achaya, that implies that a treifa is not able to live. So Manolan, from where do we know this? Techsiv, and the answer is because it's written in the pasuk, V'zos achaya asher tochlu, this is the chaya which you can eat, and we understand from there, chaya ochol, that if it's able to live, it can be eaten. She'ein achaya lo seichel, but if it's not able to live, it cannot be eaten. Mechlal, the treifa lo chaya, and that implies that the treifa is not able to live. That's why the treifa is not able to be eaten. But the Gemara continues and asks, Ulaman damar treifa chaya. Now, according to the one who holds that a treifa does live, and the Rishonim note that even the one who says a treifa is able to live, it really just means it can live beyond a year, but still ultimately that injury will prove fatal. But Manole, so again, where is that opinion? Where's the source that the treifa could live? Nafkale, he learns it out because it says in the pasuk, Mizos achaya asher tochlu, learning from the Zos. The Zos is a miyut, it's an exclusion. Zos hachaya ochol chaya acheres lo seichel. This one which can live can be eaten, but others which can live cannot be eaten. Mechlal the treifa chaya, that implies that a treifa is able to live, but still cannot be eaten. So the Gemara says, V'idach, so then the other opinion, Hai Zos my Avile. So what does he do with Zos? That is an exclusion. And the Gemara says, Mi boy le l'chiratana devei Rabbi Shmuel. He uses the Zos for the teaching in the yeshiva of Rabbi Shmuel. The Tana devei Rabbi Shmuel, because it was taught in the yeshiva of Rabbi Shmuel. Zos hachaya asher tochlu. Again, it says Zos hachaya asher tochlu. Melamed shetafas HaKadosh Baruch Hu mikol min v'min. It shows that HaKadosh Baruch Hu took every species, v'herelo l'mosh, and he showed it to Moshe Rabbeinu. V'yamar lo, he said, Zos achol, this can be eaten. V'zos lo teichel, and this cannot be eaten. But the Gemara continues and asks, V'idach, but then the other opinion, Nami also, Mi boile l'chiratana devei Rabbi Shmuel. Isn't he also going to need the Zos for the teaching of the Tana devei Rabbi Shmuel? And the Gemara says, Inochi Nami. The Gemara says, actually, yes, indeed, that is true. Ela treifa chayim minoli. So therefore, we're back to the question, how does that opinion know that a treifa is able to live? And the Gemara says to that, Nafkale me'idach Tana devei Rabbi Shmuel. He learns it from a different Tana devei Rabbi Shmuel. The Tana devei Rabbi Shmuel, because it was taught in the yeshiva of Rabbi Shmuel, Bein hachaya hanecheles uvein hachaya asher lo se'achel. It says in the pasuk that you make a distinction between the chaya that is eaten and not eaten, and elu shmona esrei treifos shenemru l'moshe misinai. This refers to the 18 treifos that are said halach l'moshe misinai, and so therefore again it's making a distinction between the living one that is eaten and the living one that is not eaten, and the living one that is not eaten is with the treifa, and so therefore you see that treifa is able to live. And we will take a look at a few of the Rashis. It said, Nishbra hashedra v'nifsak achur. It said that if the spine is broken and the cord, the spinal cord, if that is severed, chada, he Rashi says, that's really all one. With treifas didam misham chutu, and really the treifas there is because the cord was severed. V'nishbra hashedra, when it says that the spine is broken, to katani, when it says that, orcha demil sanakat, that's just generally what happens. To psikas hachut al yedei shvira hashedra, because again, the cord is severed when the spine breaks. And Rashi continues, naflam in hagag, if the animal falls off the roof, v'shachta miyad a treifa, and he slaughters it immediately after it falls from the roof, it is a treifa. Afal pi she'ein shever, even though there's nothing broken near a bow, even though it's not visible that anything broke, but choshen shenisrasku v'nisparku evera, we have a concern that it was crushed, that the limbs were broken, and so therefore there is a concern of treifas. And Rashi notes, vein tam b'treifas sha'alacha l'moshe misinai, and there's no necessarily a logical reason by treifas, it's halacha l'moshe misinai, what is included among the treifas. Gemara, now the Gemara says, Shem shasa me'es la'es v'shachta, if he waited me'es la'es, which is generally 24 hours, and then slaughtered it ksheira, so then it's kosher, v'yafal pishalo amda, even though it did not stand. And Rashi continues, Nishtabru rov tzlo sef, most of its ribs were broken below shum nefila, that's without falling treifa, it's a treifa. Gemara mefarish ma'rov, and the Gemara will explain what is a majority. And Rashi continues, Drusas hazaev, the clawing of a wolf, shehika b'tziparno v'matil bo'eres v'sarfa b'daka, again according to Rabbi Yehuda, that's just by the smaller species of animals that we say that there's eris as well. When the wolf claws the animal, there's eris, there's poison as well. And again, that's only going to cause that damage to make it a treifa by a small species. Aval begasa lo olim zihari lemiklia, but according to Rabbi Yehuda, by the larger species, the poison will not affect it in that way. It's not a treifa. Udrusa sari begasa, and then the clawing of a lion, that would be even by the large animal, by the large species. V'chol shekein bedaka, certainly by the smaller one. V'tanakama savar, now the Tanakama disagrees with Rabbi Yehuda and holds that olim zihari d'ze'ev lemiklia nama legasa, that even by the wolf, the clawing of the wolf will cause the large animal, the large species, to be a treifa. And Rashi in the Gemara continues, Ulamandam or treifa chaya, according to the one who holds that a treifa is able to live. Lakaman b'pirk, and this will be later in our parak, Amru lo, they said to him, Valo harvi meskaimo shtayim v'shaloshanim, many of them do survive 2 or 3 years. And Rashi continues, Shmona esrei treifas, 18 treifas, lav mikra kamishtoi. This is not from the psukim, al halacha l'moshe misinai, and rather these are halacha l'moshe misinai. And the Gemara continues and asks, v'su leka, but are there no other treifas? There are only 18. Va'ika baskar, but there's baskar, that's a mnemonic for some treifas. V'shev shmaitza, that means the 7 teachings, that's 7 teachings of Amoroim that are beyond those that are listed by the Tanoim. Rashi explains, v'su leka l'shmona asar, are there really only 18? And we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Mem Beis Amud Beis.